All right, good morning or good afternoon. So, since we haven't done anything like this in world history yet, just a few quick reminders. Um, so, you will be able to go through this just like we normally would be in class, as if I was actually there. You can always rewind, okay, but naturally, just like any other ed puzzle, you cannot jump forward. As you are watching each video, you need to make sure that you have all of your blanks filled in on your notes, just like we would if I was actually there. If you have any questions that you really want answered, go ahead and email them to me, and you'll get those responses whenever I get to them, depending on where I'm at today and tomorrow. But other than that, you're also going to have questions, just like we would if we were doing an actual Pear Deck in class. So this should be as close as possible as what we can get to a normal lecture. So most of my 4 classes of world history were pretty much at the same point, but it has been a while since we've done notes because of the country project and the snow days. So some of this you might already have filled in, some of it you might need to fill in, so make sure you just have your blanks completed. So we have already talked about Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín in the South American revolutions. You can see on the map that Bolívar was up in the north, present-day Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and then San Martín was more down in the south. He started out in Argentina, and he made his way up north through present-day Chile, Peru, and these two are going to end up meeting in Ecuador. They have a meeting, and essentially Bolivar, who had a less than stellar track record, okay, he was still very successful, but he did have some downfalls, mainly because his military was made up of volunteers. But he agrees to let José de San Martín take control of the revolutionary forces, and they have their final battle at the Battle of Ayacucho in the South American Revolution. This was December 9th, 1824, and this is going to be that last push for a revolution or freedom in South America. In the part where Bolivar's name is on the map, all these present-day countries that I previously mentioned, these are going to be known as Gran Colombia. So you have those names listed there. They also included present-day Panama. So today, Panama is considered part of North America or Central America, but at this point in time, it is going to be part of that South American region. So here, hopefully those of you who have seen this remember it, but you can see again in this orange part, including present-day Panama, this is Gran Colombia, and then the yellow part is going to be the Confederation of Peru and Bolivar. And I also mentioned previously that there is a landlocked country right in here. Okay, landlocked means that it doesn't touch any major ocean, called Bolivia. Okay, but it will form later on in South American history. All right. So in the Mexican War for Independence, unlike the South American or the South American Revolution, on your social structure of Latin America, you have the natives and the mestizos that are really going to lead the fight for independence in Mexico, compared to the fight in South America that was primarily led by Creoles. So in 1810, you have Padre Miguel Hidalgo, and he really believed in these Enlightenment ideas that we talked about before Christmas. This idea that people should play a stronger role in the government rather than relying on the monarchies to make all of their decisions for them. So he's going to call for rebellion, and they're going to march on Mexico City. However, he is defeated in the early 1800s. Later on, a few years later, you have Padre Jose Maria Morelos, and he is going to lead the revolution for about 4 years, but he also faces defeat. And finally, you have the gentleman on the right, Agustin de Iturbide, and he is going to formally declare independence for the Mexico region in 1821. All right, so hopefully you remember from American history in 8th grade, Mexico used to be a heck of a lot larger than what it is today. So naturally, the orange part up on the map, that is present-day Mexico. Mexico also extended all the way up into the North American region, way off the map, including present-day Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Nevada, California, Colorado, all the way up into to the southern border of Oregon. All of that is going to be lost to the United States in the 1800s. And then also the South American region, okay, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, this whole area also used to belong to Mexico. They are going to formally declare their independence from Mexico in 1823. So Mexico loses land to the south and they lose land to the north, even though the Mexico region used to be at least half, or 2 times, if not 3 times the size that it is currently. All right. So we talked about the difference with Brazil back in the age of exploration. Hopefully you recall that Spain colonized the vast majority of the Americas. However, Pedro Alvarez Cabral, he wanted to replicate the path of Bartholomew Diaz, who reached the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. So essentially, Cabral just wanted to leave Portugal, sail south around Africa, and reach the most southern tip that they knew at the time. However, he miscalculated his route, and he swung so far to the west that he actually lands in Brazil and claims it for Portugal. As a result, Brazil remains Portuguese and is still very Portuguese as far as their culture today, and they also speak Portuguese, all because of Cabral's error in calculations. Another thing that makes Brazil very different from the rest of South America is that they had a bloodless revolution. It wasn't violent, there was no bloodshed, very similar to the Glorious Revolution that we talked about with England and the Stuarts, whenever James II was overthrown by William and Mary of Orange. So in 1807, you have Napoleon over in Europe kind of doing his thing that we also talked about before Christmas. So he has this grand idea of building an empire in Europe and also building an empire with the land that he had control of in the Americas. Okay, after the Haitian Revolution and the selling of Louisiana, he decides to focus his empire efforts on Europe. However, he's going to make several big mistakes that is going to lead to his demise. His first mistake is the continental system, which you can also see from the map. He wanted to control trade and basically harm Great Britain because of it. He also tries to attempt to close Portuguese ports. With his second mistake, he gets into Spain. He overthrows the Spanish monarchy and puts his brother on the throne. He then makes his way into Portugal. Now think about it. If you were the monarchy in Portugal and you just watched the Spanish monarchy be overthrown, what do you think is probably going to happen to you whenever Napoleon gets there? You're probably going to be overthrown as well. So, as a result, the Portuguese family, they decided to escape to their colony in Brazil. Okay, they wanted to get away from the danger that Napoleon presented. As a result, whenever they get there, they declaim Rio de Janeiro the capital, and they actually governed from Brazil for about 14 years. In 1815, they decide to return to Portugal because the Portuguese people are like, hey, what the heck? You know, it's just not the same without you. It's not as strong without you. You shouldn't be in your colony governing whenever you could be in your home country governing. Like, Napoleon's gone, we're done. And so they decide to return to their native country of Portugal. However, the people of Brazil, they had been under a monarchy for 14 years. They don't want to go back to colonialism. And so the prince of the royal family, Dom Pedro, he stays in Brazil. And the people refuse to return to colonial status. And so they pretty much protest. Okay, they sign a petition in order to have the crowned prince become their king and rule in Brazil. And the royal family obliges to that. They agree. And so this was truly a bloodless revolution for independence in Brazil. A little less exciting than some of the other ones that have wars, but if you can have no bloodshed, that's probably the best route. All right, so as we have this shift in society, we kind of have the development of 3 different schools of political thought. Whenever we say schools of political thought, this doesn't mean that like the school that you're sitting in right now. Okay, these are just kind of like different categories or different groups of how people view politics and how the government should be ran. So your first one is conservative. Okay, if you were a conservative around this time period, you would argue for protecting the monarchies of Europe. You don't want any change. Most of the time, conservatives already own land and they already had money and they were doing just fine. So why would they want to mess up a good thing in their eyes? Now, a liberal, they wanted to give more money, or I'm sorry, more power to Parliament. Okay, so Parliament is kind of like our Congress. It's that group of people who have various powers, including lawmaking, usually collecting taxes as well. So the liberals, they didn't want extreme change, but they definitely wanted to give more authority to Parliament. And they believed that only the educated and landowners should be able to vote. On the far left of the spectrum, you have the radicals, or the extreme. Okay, think like French Revolution, Reign of Terror, whenever you think of radical. Now, if somebody's radical, that doesn't mean that they have to be like Robespierre and want to execute everybody who gets in the way of revolution. But the revolutionaries, they were radicals. Okay, they favored this drastic change in order to extend democracy to all people. Especially with the radicals. Okay, as revolution increases and radicalism increases, you have the rise of nationalism. Okay, and this is that belief that it's that extreme patriotism, is that people should be completely loyal to their nation and to their people who actually have something in common and their history is the same, rather than being in favor of a particular king. Okay, whatever is best for the country, that's what nationalism is all about. Not necessarily what's best for the king or what's best for a particular ruler. All right, so you have the rise of nation states in Europe during this time too. Okay, you already have France, you already have England, you already have Spain. Okay, those 3 countries have been centralized with an independent government for quite a while. France not so much, but England and Spain have. Again, those liberals and those radicals, they tended to believe in this nationalistic viewpoint. They weren't happy with things. Okay, so they are going to favor more change, which is going to increase their nationalistic viewpoints. Germany, they wanted to unify their states, and they wanted to be a nation state. Just a side note, unify should be in red. You can see that it's bolded a little bit. Please don't miss that one. Additionally, Ottoman Empire, I'm sorry about missing those, but make sure you don't forget to put those in on your blanks. So Germany had fallen extremely far behind, and that goes back to the actions of Charlemagne with the creation of the Holy Roman Empire, and the fact that that Holy Roman Empire is going to be fragmented over and over and over again throughout history, especially after the 30 Years' War, whenever that area is broken into over 300 different states, with each one being headed by an individual who got to choose the own religion for that area. So Germany, in the 1800s, they're going to be really close to unification, but they're surrounded by all of these big countries that have been unified for a long time, and yet Germany still doesn't have all their stuff together. Okay, so they're going to push for unification. In the 1830s, you have you had the Congress of Vienna. Okay, but by the 1830s, that Congress was breaking down. Their goals were breaking down. And you have just the rise of nationalism, and you have the Greeks and the Italians, who have a huge grudge against a lot of countries because they have fallen so far behind.